Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fun Friday with a friend. Really excited to have this conversation because you come from the same world that I used to be in, so we can talk the talk, walk the walk with single family homes and everything else in between. But listeners, please give a warm welcome, even though you're not here, but a warm welcome to Francis Mangubat, Unlocked Real Estate. Did I say that okay, or did I mess it up
You
again?
perfect. And
Cool.
thanks for having me on here, Craig.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, no, I'm excited. We've become fast friends here, obviously, a lot of mutuals. So I'm super excited to have this conversation and obviously, of course, grow a relationship and learn more about you today here, of course. But with that said, give us a little bit of your background. You have a little bit of an unorthodox story. So tell us about how you got here, what you're doing. You're obviously in the residential space. So here you go. Have at it.
Yeah, so Craig, thanks again for having me on here. My name is Francis Mangubat, based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. How I got here, I graduated University of Delaware with a degree in finance. Coming out of school, I didn't really know what to do, but then I ended up watching a show called Million Dollar Listing. Watched the show and just thought, wow, if these idiots can do this on the show, I can sell real estate as well. So got into Philly, and it was funny. I cold called the number one guy in town. His name's Mike McCann, the real estate man. He's been number one in the business for 30 plus, number one in Philadelphia in Berkshire Hathaway for 30 plus years, top 50 broker in the country. And so I call him, didn't get a hold of him. Now I know that brokers typically don't pick up numbers that they don't recognize. He sends me over to his broker, and now this is my ninth year in the business. But 2 years ago, we became business partners and started a real estate sales company called Unlocked, powered by McCann.
Very cool. So before that, though, of course, you went to college, you said in Delaware, but you were not born here. So you mind touching on the story of how you kind of came over here, where you're from, the inception and origins of everything and kind of that, because I think it's very inspiring and truly you're living the American dream. And you got citizenship recently. So can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, of course. So I was born in Manila, the Philippines. I moved to America when I was 8 in 2001. So that was quite a culture shock. So not necessarily a culture shock, but in the Philippines, family was on the wealthier side. Dad had a super great corporate job who was making more income than my mother, who was an OBGYN. My mom was already a fully practicing doctor. My grandmother, my mom's side of the family, did extremely well. So it was very interesting going from there to when we moved to America. My mom had to redo residency. So my mother had to raise 5 kids on a $40,000 a year resident salary. And my dad could not transfer over his skills from his business skills from the Philippines to America, and almost had a culture shock because he spoke English with an accent. So for most of my life, my father worked minimum wage at a $7 an hour job, front desk at an insurance company. So pretty much my whole time growing up in America, up until high school, I was that kid that grew up on free and reduced lunch, which as a little kid, it was super embarrassing rolling up to school in that piece of shit car and being one of those kids who had the reduced lunch at 25 cents. But I would say that extremely helped me out as I post college and in college. And even when my parents started making money, when my mom became a fully practicing doctor. So in 2008, she started becoming a fully practicing doctor, was making somewhat of a decent higher income. And then my parents got killed in by the Great Recession real
The
estate because
GFC.
they bought top of the market 2004-05 in Buffalo, New York, had to sell that house for a loss, but also bought top of the market in Dover, Delaware, 07-08. What's crazy is that they sold their house around 2022 and still made a profit on their house, even though they bought top of the market, which has been awesome, good for them.
Well, also
So
goes to show, if you buy real estate and hold it for long enough, you will in fact collect hopefully a gain at some point. Just a matter of when. It's not always linear, right? And you look at kind of the graphing. It's so funny in Phoenix, Arizona, which I practiced real estate for quite some time there. And if you go to the history on a property, right, it's super funny. You'll see a property that's sold in like 2001 for like 100 grand, and then you'll see a sale in like 2007 for like 700K. And then you're going to see a sale in 2012, 2013 for like $400,000. And then you're going to see a sale in, 2022 for, $1 million. So it's not linear how that goes. And it's like, oh, wow, this person did terrible. This person did great. This person did terrible. This person did really well. So, it can be a little cyclical in that regard. But, would you say that things at least got better? I mean, obviously the investment side, you got slaughtered at least, but at least your standard of living had to increase once the income was, to a doctor's salary. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
yeah, for sure, because we went from living in, let's say, a 5-bedroom, super old, let's say 50-year-old house, from being on my mom's resident salary. And then when we moved to Dover, Delaware, we had a brand new construction house, 5-bedroom, 3,000 square feet, new construction. So actually, what I super respect is that in 2009, my mother's boss said, we literally have to reduce your salary or we have to fire you because we're going to go out of business. So my mom took the pay cut and worked through it.
Right, right. So you obviously touched on this, but do you think your experience of going to, living cushy in the Philippines to kind of being more on the impoverished side of things in America right when you got here, even with really competent parents, that kind of set you up the trajectory of, oh, wow, I saw the life, then I saw what it looks like to be on the other side, and you're like, okay, I don't care what it is, but there's no way that's going to be for me. Like, did it piss you off? Like when you didn't have the things that maybe some other people had? Like, were you sorry for yourself or were you mad or were you like, okay, when it's my turn, I'm going to get it?
So it was definitely the last part where I've always thought when it's my turn, I'm going to get it. And growing up, I thought, how could other parents figure this out? And my parents couldn't figure it out. But now looking back, I know that I have the best parents in the world because they truly did their best. And that inspires me to do my very best.
Right.
So, and post college and even in college, when I saw a lot of my friends just dicking around, I would still be working and I would be very productive. Even so, when I graduated University of Delaware, my goal was to make $100,000 a year by 30. That was my goal, and I made 6 figures my first year out at 22. And instead of getting comfortable, I was making more money than all my friends. I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and even now, I'm still pushing.
Right.
And I still work nonstop.
Right. And that's the thing. It's funny. I think if you get the residential background and, you can't say no to a deal, you're always working. Even when you're not working, you're working one way or another. Like this is work to some facet. If we're talking, just being around each other, it's work minded. And then when we were in Sedona, of course, not too long ago, you were taking phone calls left and right, as was I. So the grind doesn't stop. And I think some people think some real estate professionals, of course, make too much money. And sometimes they're right, but they don't see the countless hours on the back end and the level of expertise that, a great top level broker can do and the price that they can command for a property and to get top dollar, which obviously you've gone through that process and sold hundreds, maybe even thousands of homes at this point with the level of production that you have done, of course. So talk about getting the business. So you message and kind of cold outreach that an individual, and then did he not let you on the team because you mentioned that you guys recently got into business? So what was that kind of journey and process like getting into the world? How did you start producing and all that?
So top agents in the residential real estate business don't hire brand new agents, or it takes a very special exception for one of the best agents in the brokerage to go hire a new agent. The reason why that is top experienced agents, their value of time per hour is so much that by bringing on a new agent, the top agents actually lose money by bringing the new agents on because new agents require a lot of time, attention. Exactly. So what I did is I was able to get an interview with the second best broker in Philadelphia. He's one of my biggest mentors in the business. That's how I learned how to be such a great real estate broker. So his name's Antonio Attican. He's a Wharton business alum. He was the second best in Philly next to Mike McCann. So yeah, my first 9 months in the business, I sold about 4.5 million in real estate. First full year, sold 10 million, and yeah, it's just gotten better and better for me every single year.
Yeah, the value of residential real estate and really any business that you want to be in is the compounding nature to it. And unfortunately, a deal creates a deal. You need a job to get a job, but doing business will only spawn more business, more referrals, and you'll get better and better. And you'll also have the confidence when you get to the listing side of, commanding a higher split negotiation, which we'll get into the commissions and whatnot as, the NAR, National Association of Realtors, just had a big lawsuit come about. So we're in a very much so changing landscape with regard to residential real estate and, how commission fees and work out. And we'll maybe debunk that and talk about the misnomers and maybe some of the downside consequences that are unintended consequences that came up that pertain to that settlement that came about. But with that said, what did you do to get business going and producing? Because I think what another misnomer is we get paid to perform. We do not get paid to drive around on a Saturday or an afternoon to point out random things and, hey, look at the dock in the lake over there, this, that. You get paid to close houses. So that means you got to produce. And I think a lot of people, they get into residential real estate, get into it for the wrong reasons, which is partially why that lawsuit's here, of course, but get into it for the wrong reasons. Maybe they want to, show a couple of properties, sell $1 million house, cash a big check, take a vacation, come back, so on and so forth. But top producers are nonstop prospectors, have systems in place, have machines going and running for them. If you haven't read The $1 Million Listing Agent by Gary Keller, you're doing yourself a disservice. You must read that book. That's probably the number one thing you should do if you're getting into the business. So what did you do to produce? What did you do to find deals in business?
Is that when I first started, or is that now?
First started, and the evolution be perfect. Like, that's beautiful for anyone who wants to get in that space or is in it currently that needs a little jumpstart and a kick. That'd be very valuable for them to hear.
Yeah, so when I first started, every opportunity where I could generate more business, I would do. And so for me, my criteria is meet as many people as I possibly could, shake as many hands. And I worked out twice a day, did fitness classes, group fitness classes twice a day. I did 4 open houses every single weekend. I did as much cold outreach as I possibly could. And my criteria for meeting people is that I wanted to meet anyone that's lived in Philadelphia or anyone that worked in Philadelphia, and the higher income level or the better they live, the better, because typically someone lives in a better part of town, they have neighbors, and that's great business development opportunity for me.
Right.
And where that's changed now is now I have a lot more clients, and I'm super selective with the clients that I take on because I have more clients than time. And the more serious someone, I pre-screen all my clients. And so, for example, if a seller isn't realistic about the market conditions and they just want too much money, then I may not take that listing on. Or if a developer just wants outrageous numbers for their product and the place is about to fall apart, or they want 2021 numbers, well, it's not worth me investing both money to market the listing and my time and attention calling brokers, calling buyers, bringing attention to that listing. So now just a lot more selective, whereas me 9 years ago, it was just taking any piece of business that I absolutely could. And for me, my VIP and best clients, I'll do a rental for them. One of my best clients, who he probably owns 100 plus units at 23, it's him and his father. I sold one of his boutique walk-up condo buildings up. It was a total sale of about 1.1 million, but I sold his bottom unit, which was leased, and the lease didn't expire for another 6 months. So I sold the condo building. I called the tenant and say, hey, can I find you another condo? And the tenant was fortunately super cool and chill. So I signed them on to find a new place, and it was a $2,000 a month lease, and I handled it all.
Right. So that's basically the boutique service and kind of the value you'll provide to your VIPs and whatnot. And, I think it is a misnomer, and I've had situations where you don't want to just take any deal. A stale listing is time, opportunity costs, and stress, and unfortunate things you do not want. Even in the height of the market, there are people like, no, that price does not make sense. I will not do that because, as I said, you get paid to perform and to close. You do not get paid to hold people's hand and to call them. And also, I'm sure you're at the point where you have some screening where, hey, listen, if you don't like what people are saying on the front end, you're probably not going to do business with them. So you get luxury of choice. So when did you get to the inflection point where you do have luxury of choice? Like, was that a couple years ago? Are you still working through that right now?
I would say for me, it's unique because I'll just work more. So I'll wake up earlier and go to sleep later. But what I would say is I started my first real estate sales team in 2018. It was called Advanced Philly. And my old partner, Lawrence Resnick, basically his father was a developer. He was a GC slash realtor. And essentially how the partnership first began is that he saw that I was capturing some of the best developers in Philadelphia at 22, 23. I actually ended up taking some of his clients. And Lawrence, intelligently, he saw, instead of saying, screw this Francis guy, he sucks, Lawrence thought, wow, if this kid's 22, 23, capturing these developers and getting these developers as clients, he must be doing something right. So essentially, he took me out for lunch after the office meeting. And right after the lunch, he goes, dude, we should go start our own team. We should start our own team together. And so when we first started the team, Lawrence had about 50 listings, but he was building a handful. He was building maybe 25 of these as the GC. So basically, Lawrence took those listings, had me do all the work essentially. And that's how I cut my teeth and learned residential real estate development. And a few years later, I just got so good at doing the real estate development work that I brought in equivalent to what the listings that Lawrence already had.
Right. From the development side or from the income
From
side?
From the listing side, representing developers.
So how did you source the developers on that end? Because that's a tough market to crack, tough ticket to crack. How do you get in front of these people?
I actually think
Yeah.
it's very easy.
Really?
Because
what's your competitive edge, or what did you
well, so
pitch
let me
them?
ask you something, Craig. If I had you just sold your house in Arizona for $850,000, you have 6 figures coming at you. If I could show you a deal in Philly that I actually just sourced for another client where on that equity, if you can make over $500,000, would you do the deal?
Yes.
So for me, development's actually very easy because I only make phone calls when I have deals that make sense. So I'm pre-underwriting the deal. I'm doing all my numbers. So I'm never calling. I'm not the broker that sells bullshit garbage deals.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm making a phone call,
It's
the
intentional.
deal pencils in some sort of way. I don't waste anyone's time, and I don't have time to waste anyone's time.
Right.
So essentially, I'm in the business to make clients money. And it's very easy to be the broker that just flat out makes my clients money.
Right. And that's, where your credibility comes at hand, where if you're calling them, you're calling them, and your contact should just have a money signal, not, annoying ass broker coming into play, right? Which is the difference between a lot of people, which is adding value or adding a nuisance and someone just talking in my ear to hear themselves talk, or just wants to make a quick buck, as opposed to more of a partnership structure. And then you kind of open the door to kind of the next part of the conversation I want to talk about, which is the investment and the development side. So perfect segue there, which was, how did you learn the numbers, and how did you kind of figure out the development side, costs, things of that nature?
So when I first started my first company, Advanced Philly, with my old business partner, he was a GC, and that allowed me to learn the construction numbers very well. And being a top producing broker, I knew the outsale, the ARV of all the homes. And I've been very fortunate to where I've had the best engineers in the city as my clients and friends. I've had the best general contractors. My circle is some of the best realtors, brokers in the area. If I need a piece of information from another broker, I've given them value before to where they'll easily let me know what a house went under contract for before it actually sells. So I just have the best contractors, subs, best accountants.
Information in the city.
So all it really is putting all that information together to get the numbers. The big reason why most real estate agents don't know development is they just don't really care to know all the pieces. And it's a lot of work to get to know all the pieces. But fortunately, I've just been able to put all the pieces together, and it's just a big math formula. And I've always excelled in math.
Right, right. That makes sense. And what were some of the learning curves that you kind of went through pertaining to the development side? Because that's not, a cakewalk. And, with COVID happening, pricing kind of got crazy with material, labor was nuts. You had lumber that got crazy. You had, shipping containers off the coast of California, Long Beach that couldn't come through, supply chain issues. So, what was that process like, the learning curve and everything else in between?
So this is probably one of my greatest learning lessons ever. So I had a developer client in the middle of COVID, and I found him, let's say, 40 to 50 units to develop that were going to make money. And in the middle of COVID, there was a lot of uncertainty in the market. So this developer wanted me to do open houses on his projects when they were at mechanicals in the middle of the winter. So I said, no way, this is crazy. That's an obscene ask. So we parted ways, and most real estate agents would be depressed about potentially losing multiple six figures worth of commission. And so I just said, wow, that really sucked, but I can just do it myself. So I did my first deal. I bought a place this is my first renovate value add deal. So I bought a single family house for $400,000, and I sourced that with private money. That was
Was it a single family, multifamily?
It was a single family.
Okay.
So that was 3 points and 9%. I did the construction cash, which is a little over $100,000. That house appraised for $830,000, and I was in for less than $550,000.
Right.
And I go, wow, I can really scale this. It leased out for $4,000 a month.
Right. So what was did you burr that? So you basically, and for those who don't know what burring is, it's buy, renovate, refinance, and rent. So that's what burr means for those who don't know. Did you burr that opportunity there?
I did burr that.
Yeah. So do you still own that property today?
I do.
Okay. So then you are in for that. How much equity did you pull out? Did you basically max out the LTV there to basically leave about, 20% down or 25% down to make the numbers pencil? What was that like?
I believe I pulled out about $525,000 or something like that.
So you basically were in the project. The initial amount was like $100,000 down, and then you put how much down on the project level?
Well, I just paid for closing cost.
Okay.
So let's say I put 3-4% down, I bought it for $400,000.
So what did it? So you bought it for $400,000. What did it appraise at on market? Because you probably bought that below, market value to a certain extent. Is that correct?
Yeah, it appraised for actually it was private money, so my
didn't matter.
Investor trusted me.
Okay.
So you didn't have to do an appraisal.
So basically, you're $100,000 basically all in on that project, and you turn around and made a couple $100,000 on that.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Not bad.
So that was probably the first taste of, oh shit, I need to get to the investor side right away. Is that a fair assessment? And that's what Robert Kiyosaki always talks about, which is get to the I side, because the I side is taxed way better. And for those who don't know the beauty of real estate, when you do a refinance, these are cash-free or tax-free refinances. So if you pull out $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, great news. You're not getting taxed on that. So it's very scalable, to your point. Now, obviously, there's some caveats to make sure that the debt-to-income ratio on a personal side makes sense. I'm sure this is an LLC of sorts, and there's only so many loans you can take out. But the principle applies that this is a very accretive and lucrative exercise to do if you can navigate it correctly.
Yep.
Yeah. So tell me about the fundamentals there. You rented it out. What was your mortgage note? And then you rented it for $4,000.
I think it was in the low mid threes.
Gotcha. And if I'm not mistaken,
and $4,000.
When a lender underwrites you, they underwrite 75% of the rental income, not the full 100%, to make sure that they have a cushion on their end for their loan purposes. Is that correct in this instance?
Yes, in the residential underwriting based off of a DTI, the lender does take a 25% for expenses when it's a brand new lease.
Got it.
If something that's been existing for 12 months and has been leased out, then the lender just takes a number that's on the profit that's on the tax return.
That makes sense. Okay, so that was your first project, and then obviously you go to scale. So what was next after that? And actually, before we get into that,
Yeah.
what did you do to the property to enhance the value and basically over double and 2x the appraised banked value to the property?
It was just in one of the best locations in town. I knew that there was a developer speccing $1.8 million homes just 2 blocks away. So just essentially very undervalued. And this property was listed in the fives, so I just lowballed it and got very technical with the negotiation, and that's how I got it.
Very cool. So you had the taste there. I'm sure that was like black tar heroin, completely addicting. What was next for you after that?
So next up was I built my own personal house, which actually won an American Institute of Architects
Congratulations.
award for Philadelphia. So the numbers on that are pretty awesome. So I bought it for, say, low 325,000, put 475,000 of hard and soft costs in it. So I'm all in it for 800 grand, and it appraised for 1,270,000.
Can you say those numbers one more time, please? I'm yeah.
all in for 800,000.
Uh-huh.
It appraised for 1,270,000.
So did you pull that equity out again, and we're basically
I
zero
did.
basis on these? So
Yeah.
now we're playing really Monopoly bucks, right? So that was the next project. And what did you do to that? Countertops, flooring, the whole nine?
No. This is a ground up new construction.
Oh, wow. Okay. Got it.
Underpinning, structural. Yeah.
So what's the timetable to do development like that?
This was messed up because I closed on this property February 2020. So there was a 8-month period where
purgatory.
of no activity.
Right.
And in Pennsylvania, we were the last state in the country where construction and real estate sales were deemed necessary or legal again.
So it was not essential, and it was the last place in the country, you're telling me?
The last state in the country.
Wow. So were you kind of like essing a brick and, we're like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Were you nervous, or did you know your basis was so good it didn't make a difference?
I wasn't really looking at that. I was just making my monthly payments. Fortunately, I did have money saved up.
Right.
And that was a quick V-shaped recovery. And 2021, the following year, was the best market since
ever
of 15 years. I mean, 5, 6, 7. There may have been more transactions in the country.
To your point there, I sold a friend. This is the first house I sold in Arizona. He put down 3%. He had a sub 3% interest rate on a property. Okay, that's how crazy it is. And he's basically, the equity multiple there is absurd. He still owns the property. It's his primary residence. But to give you a flavor of how unique that is, a VA or FHA loan, 3% down with a 2.56% interest rate. That's absolutely bonanzas, and that's why pricing is a little bit interesting right now. The single family market has a better moat around it because there's longer debt terms. Obviously, I think most of the country owns the property, or owns, if they have mortgages, they're sub 4%, probably 80 or 90% of mortgages are, and then there is a very large contingent of properties that are just owned free and clear and whatnot. So that's why the housing market currently right now is so stable, and there hasn't been a crazy crash. I mean, my house is on the market right now, and I just told you the price, which that might be shocking to you and shocking to some of my friends who Rob just confirmed this. Teddy and Rob were like, "You're not going to get that price for my house," or like, "It's $100,000 less." And here I am with a kind of a creative offer to get me too close to my list price, which is $100,000 more than basically what I bought my house for. So a good day for me over here. But that just goes to show how stable the market is, which is lovely for my needs. And then I'm thinking about it to your point there of stale equity, kind of keep flipping, keep trading, and trading up ultimately to creating the value and creating the equity there. So you do the new construction, you do that, and then where have your other projects taken you?
I've done some burr triplexes and quads and single family homes. I like single family homes just because it's what I know and it's what I look at
right
every day, and I know the construction.
Yeah, so well. It's kind of like this. We always say this, but you want to be in places where you can do legal insider trading. And when you're selling houses all day long and you have that market insight, it really is an unfair advantage that that anyone gets. And if you want to get into the real estate business from the residential side, you are not going to make it big and be smart if you're not developing, if you're not buying, flipping, trading, doing all those things. Because if you can't do that make sense, then frankly, no one can. But you don't really have the right to be sophisticated and smart if you're not doing those things. And you've obviously taken that upon yourself to do so. So,
thanks.
Yeah. So what else is in your portfolio currently? I think you have got about 20 to 40 doors roughly. Is that correct? So can you kind of talk about the makeup that comprises your portfolio?
So it's a handful of, I believe I have about 10 single family homes that are anywhere from 600,000 to 1.3. I own dirt to 25 unit building. And then recently I bought 11 units in the last 4 months that are value add multifamily.
Very cool. And are these plays all sub 4 units, you said as well?
Yeah, most of them are singles,
Right. With other
3, 4 units.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about that for the investors who don't know and the listeners of the show that don't know, if you have 4 units or less, you can get single family 30-year financing on it. Once it gets above 4 units, 4 dwellings to a property, you need to get commercial financing on it. Commercial financing inherently has a shorter term length than residential financing. Residential financing is the most accretive and beneficial structuring from a debt vehicle I think that there actually frankly exists. So I'm a big believer in that. And on my end, obviously my Lone Star Capital here and bulk of my net worth, capital isn't, of course, our deals, but it would make sense for me to have some control and autonomy with my own residents and also leverage the skill set and abilities that I've kind of obtained and obviously consult with you to help me achieve and get more lucrative, upside in the single family space because there's a ton of money to be made there and you can get really great bases and, good deals that are, pretty plentiful as opposed to multifamily. It's so well covered, especially in the institutional space. Not that there's any right or wrong there, it's just a diversity play on my end at least.
And one thing too, in the residential space, you can get DSCR commercial loans at 30-year fixed, 30-year AM. They're just a lot more expensive in terms of loan origination
Right.
than the single family residential primary residence.
Yeah, and that's kind of is that like a non-QM loan, more typically speaking, like non-qualified mortgage?
Yes. So I I was telling one of my friends on a deal that we did, but let's say someone closes out a $1 million loan, right? So getting the DSCR loan on $1 million loan would be 20,000 bucks, 2 points. Whereas I have one of my friend who has $1 million loan on a value add single family that he's doing, and the loan origination fee on that is $1,000. So it's 20 times more expensive to get that commercial money and pay that 2 points.
Right. That's, it can change your numbers, but if you need the financing, that's how you get it done. That's what you have to do sometimes,
And
right?
it's tough to get bank money just because it's going to take so long for a commercial bank to underwrite that, unless someone has a really, really good deal or really, really good relationship with that local commercial lender.
Right. So something that's always fascinating to me is talking about single family homes and when the market's going crazy, getting the highest price per square foot, especially when you do a lot of these developments, right? So how do you convey, the reasoning as to why you should break the market records? Because it's not easy to be the trendsetter if you're a buyer. And as an agent, it's not easy to convince your client, hey, this is worth this price. I know there's not really precedent for it yet, but it is the case. So how do you kind of balance that when you're on maybe the buying side and the selling side with a client?
So in an up market where the market's going up, which is 2016 to 2022, and I can only speak for Philadelphia because it's what I've known. Our city's super affordable and cheap. So there's an abundance of New York City, DC, Boston buyers, suburbs buyers that are coming to town. So an extra 100 grand is only, back in those days, an extra $450 a month to finance. So it's more of an art than it is a mathematical formula. And that's the beauty of residential real estate, because a buyer can just fall in love with the location or they can fall in love with the finishes.
It's emotional.
And it's not math driven. So as a developer, you can bank on someone overpaying. Conversely, I have a client now who we have a project in. This has been the worst market since 2009, and properties comp out by far. Will comp out by $50,000 higher. Will appraise for $50,000 higher, and just no one's buying this property right
Yeah,
now.
and it's a mortgage payment thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, let's talk about that art and science. You obviously have won, the award for design, of course, in property with Philly, which is no small feat, right, at all. So Can you kind of talk about where you kind of draw inspiration from design? Are you kind of hunting and pecking on Pinterest? Where are you kind of creating these kind of premises and feel for homes? And where did you get that kind of design eye from?
So design, I would say that this just goes back to my childhood almost because I back in the day, what was super cool was the clothing line Abercrombie and Fitch and Hollister and American Eagle.
Yeah.
And back when I was in 5th and 6th grade, I had to go work, do stuff for my parents to be able to buy clothes. So for me, I had to do, I had to make the most of having a tighter budget because I didn't have as much money as all the other kids in my class. And so that's where I've just personally developed a good fashion sense. A lot of people compliment me on how I look. So I'm not certain if it's something that I've just been born with or my childhood experience. But actually, what's funny is one of my good friends, Hugo Solero with Boss Granite, what's funny is whenever I pick out one of his slabs, he'll go sell, let's say 10 of them the next day and we'll sell out.
Because it's like,
Because
what will be next?
I've picked it for one of my houses and then he'll post it and it'll just fly.
Right. Interesting. So how do you think, so you basically develop that from basically learning how to stretch a buck, which is perfect for developing and flipping, right? Because you want to make sure you put the right money in the right places to generate the return. So in your opinion, what are the items to a house that generate the highest return? If anyone out here is doing a remodel and whatnot, because I tell people all the time, when I used to go on listing appointments, they tell me all the improvements they do. I'm like, that's great, you did that, but no one gives a shit that you did this thing that adds literally no value. It's kitchens, bathrooms, floor plan, flooring, all that. But in your opinion, what are the things that you want to work on and you advise people to improve to kind of, enhance the value and equity to their property?
I would say it's different for every market. In my market, one of the factors that makes a huge difference is parking or no parking. That's huge. Parking, the days on market goes down tremendously. Parking compared to no parking. I have a client that offered $200,000 for a deeded parking spot and didn't get it back a few years ago. And aside from parking, what I would say is that the most important would be kitchen, living, dining, and then after that, master bath
Right.
and master
Okay.
bedroom.
Gotcha. So then how do you balance the art and science of, having someone come in, making the numbers make sense, but realizing that what you're looking to achieve is probably the highest price point, right? That's all. Ultimately, the ultimate goal is to get, the highest price per square foot and the highest comp in the area. So how do you, try to achieve that each deal? How do you manage that?
I would say that's more of an art and it depends on who's developing it. So in an up market where similar to 2021 where buyers were playing around with 3% money, I would say it was worth it to build a higher end product. Now almost buyers are more so looking for value. It's tighter. And in my market, it's almost better during this time to not put as nice finishes in because you're not going to get the same market premium that you would before back in 2021. So it's market to market. And in this sense, it's economy to economy. I would say that there's not a general outlook for best practice in that sense. For example, if you look at the Miami market, it probably makes sense to go balls to the wall with finishes just because you have the whole Northeast moving to Miami and Citadel going to Miami.
Right. It's similar to Phoenix right now. If you have new construction, right? New construction is trading at a substantially better premium, or even, an upgraded home, a turnkey home. I know you walked into my house and saw the outdated cabinets, but from the marketplace perspective, funny enough, my property, when I was looking at the other market options, like, well, it's not going to be the newest here, but when you factor the high ceilings and how the property looks right now, I'm very confident there's actually not this option in the marketplace. And, the proof is in the pudding with how many showings have gotten and the offers and interest I've received already. So the premium for turnkey finishes and, ready-made properties that are out of the box ready to go, where you and I would probably never buy a property that's turnkey, the most consumers don't know how to do it and they need to be told what looks good.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would say in a market like Miami, there's just so much demand there that, in my opinion, I think it just makes sense to put in the best finishes because Miami's almost similar to a 2021 market in where for single family homes, there's just nothing on the market.
Right.
One of my friends bought a house for 1.6 that he's going to tear down. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts. So, can you lend any insights into kind of the Pace Morby side of the world? Because he's kind of taking the internet and Instagram by storm with this kind of sub two culture, creative financing, and whatnot. And I would be curious to know if there's any kind of misnomers around the subject, if there's any, you know, issues you find with the community, or if you think it's all great or and whatnot, because now everyone seemingly thinks that there's all these sub two deals going around. I'm just like, listen, to people that want to do that, because I get asked frequently, it's like no seller with options would ever do that. Like, period.
Correct. If
Like,
it's on the market and it's a desirable listing.
no seller with options would ever take a carry. Why would you ever want to do that? You're not getting paid up front. It's super sticky. It's not an easy thing to navigate. So, as you know, at some point in the market when rates were at the highest and maybe people thought things would change, maybe it made sense. But now some people are doing it. I'd be curious to know if you think it's truly viable and kind of what your overall holistic view on that subject is.
I would say it's truly viable, having just done my first sub 2
Okay.
deal myself.
Congratulations.
But I haven't joined Pace community or anything. I just watched one of his YouTube videos.
Right.
And so I seen talking about it. And I just called my title company, called my attorney, and figured out how to do it. I just did it.
Right. And can you walk through some of the nuances pertaining to kind of the creative financing sub two world that you maybe learned through the process of and kind of how you navigated that transaction?
Yeah, most people think that the deed and mortgage go together, or the typical individual would be think that it's illegal for me to deed the property over to Craig without paying off the mortgage because of the due on sale clause. When in reality, I could deed, let's say I'm selling to Craig and Craig's a sub 2 buyer. I can deed the property on you, and the exception on title would be the first lien position mortgage. And it would be on the lender to see whether they would want to foreclose on that is. And I spoke to a couple attorneys who outlined the benefits, the pros and the cons, and I made my decision and did the deal.
So what was your, solution to that seller? Because they probably couldn't get a normal offer or an offer that met their expectations. So what does the seller get out of it? What do you get out of it? And where was the win for both sides in the meeting of the minds?
So in my specific situation, the seller was super desperate to sell because the seller was living on the West Coast and he only had 1 of 3 units leased in his triplex. And apparently he had a very bad management company. So he was negative so-and-so month, just lost his job. And he just wanted out of the property. So I essentially bought it. I'm putting money into the triplex, leasing it, and it's a value add deal with sub 2 purchase.
Very cool.
So it's a $400,000 purchase. That would be a $13,000 loan. So I'm saving $13,000 worth of loan origination fees by just taking it subject to having the first lien on there rather than to get my own commercial financing on it.
So I guess moving forward, you take the payments over. Is that correct?
Yep.
Are you on title now?
Yes.
Are you doing a value enhancement plan to it?
Yes.
So what did he get out? Did he get any cash, or he basically just took the property off his hands and he basically had his equity evaporated?
He was going to get cash in it, but I negotiated about $30,000 worth of repairs into the place.
Right. So very good, as you should. So did he get anything other than basically not getting foreclosed on?
No, you're going to love this. He actually had to write a check to the closing.
Wow. So he paid you to take the property off his hands?
Well, no, he just had to pay the $30,000 worth of repairs.
Right.
Transfer tax in Philadelphia is 2.139% each side, the highest in the country.
Uh-huh.
And he had to pay for his broker fees.
And was that you? Or
I
someone
wasn't.
else?
I wasn't a dual agent. I represented my LLC that I
Right.
did with a friend.
Right.
So
Okay.
I had my own representation, and he had his representation. And if it weren't the seller's agent was extremely good, and there wasn't.
Well, he's good enough to convince his clients to take a
Well,
sub 2 deal,
well,
which is not
because
nothing.
I'm trustworthy.
Yeah.
Though, and that's why. And I
Yeah.
have a flawless track record in my city. I think if it was anyone else that would have suggested it, it would not have been taken seriously. There was an overpriced listing in my market that hasn't sold in 150 days. And I said, would the seller consider seller financing? And then the seller's agent's exact words were, "Oh, I had someone ask about that, and the seller said, absolutely not. But I'll bring it up again because you're actually trustworthy and you're legitimate."
Yeah, it goes back to the value of relationships and how crucial and pivotal that actually is for moments like this where, this is a unique profile that you could facilitate and actually do because you have your ducks in a row.
Well, and reputation too.
Right. No, reputation's everything. Whether it be in our business, your business, getting clients, getting referrals, scaling anything, your reputation needs to be on point, of course. So is that something you think you want to pursue more indefinitely, or is it more case by case?
Yeah, case by case.
Right.
I think where people go wrong is that they try to hunt down, I only want to do 25 unit multifamily, or I only want to buy in this specific neighborhood. Whereas, let's say that someone only wants to do 25 unit multifamily. There could be a single family house right in their backyard where they could make $1 million on, and they just missed out on that opportunity because they're not open or fluid.
Right. And I have, as I said, a really creative offer in front of me where, if you are in the business, you get a reputation, you communicate, you can kind of create outsized opportunities for yourself if you're really patient and understanding and listen and want to develop the skills to be able to, attract those opportunities coming your way. So that's, really a good little lesson there on your end where, having a reputation, doing a lot of deals, it's funny. Opportunity seems to find the people that do more transactions in this space. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. So let's talk about the NRA lawsuit. So that's the National Association of Realtors. And essentially, to set the stage on this one, for those who don't know, which I'm sure you do know because it's all over the Wall Street Journal and every other publication, it was talked on the All In podcast, yada, 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 right? So essentially, there was a new law that is changing that 6% is not the standard anymore, which for the record, all this was negotiable on the front end. There's always someone out there who's willing to do it for cheaper. As far as I'm concerned, as long as someone's not holding a gun to your head and you're under duress, making you make a decision, coercing you to something, there was never any 6% there. But with that said, can you, in your words, explain the lawsuit, what's going on, and the potential changes that are going to be underway in the single-family space?
So I don't really understand it that well, and the changes aren't being implemented until
I think July, right?
Yeah, July of this year. And I believe when National Association of Realtors was negotiating everything out, they put a set of terms on, but it's not even really clear as to how that plays on in practice because they just slapped something together, but there's no practicality or no rules yet.
Interesting. So my understanding is that basically moving forward, it'll be more clear and spelt out what the buyer's agent will be able to receive. The other thing, I just spoke with a buddy today who's in the business. I brought him to the brokerage world in Arizona. He was saying that coming in July, after that point and after that inflection point, the seller may not even be allowed to pay someone to sell their house. And the way I look at that is stupid, because why should the government dictate if you want to incentivize someone to get the best result possible?
So I'm on Gary Keller's top teams in the company.
Are you in TAN, like Top Agent Network and whatnot?
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's called TAN. I mean, it's different for every market, but it's Top Agent Network. I'm sure you're in some sort of community or group of
Yeah. This is Gary Keller's top, bro. And he's saying that a lot of the information out there is hearsay. People weren't involved in the lawsuit, and a lot of the media publications, the media is just getting their info from the attorneys, and the brokers and NAR who were involved in the lawsuit. Apparently CNN called Gary, asked him for comment, and he goes, "I'm in the middle of an active lawsuit and I can't comment."
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. People just blab, blab, blab and want to bring attention to their page without knowing
anything.
100% of what's going on.
Yeah, got it. So it's still unclear. And the way I think about this is if you're in the space, or if you're looking in the space, it's probably never been better for someone like yourself who's established or has got business going to be in it, because there's going to be a ton of people who are in it for the wrong reasons or want to make a quick buck that aren't going to come into it, which might suck up a deal or two a year from you. But it also make things more serious if you're working with buyers, that they're not going to be shopping you around and kind of treating them like a mercenary if you need signed representation to work with someone. So that is probably a positive effect. And I imagine, just like anything else, it's the 90-10 rule. 10% of agents probably do about 90% of the business in every market, so probably unanimous throughout the country.
And here's some of the things that I've been told that I haven't verified with my own lawyer, but it comes from really it's really legitimate sources. So even in the state of Missouri, cooperative compensation for brokers is not illegal. A seller can sign a 6% commission to their to their listing agent, and the agent can split that with a buyer's broker. That's completely 100% legal. The way to do it moving forward is that sellers can have the option of doing that, cooperating. You just can't put the cooperating compensation on the multiple listing service. That's what's illegal. Nowhere online can you have that you're paying a buyer's broker 3% or 2.5% or 2% or $100,000 or $50,000. What I was told actually is that you can put, Craig, let's say you're a listing agent, right?
I am a listing agent.
Yeah, so you can't put on the MLS that you're paying a 3% broker, but apparently you can put it on your website that you're paying a 3%.
Or
broker.
You can, pick up the phone, actually, what a lot of agents don't do,
you
and
can
call
text
them
and you can
and
call.
say, hey, by the way, and I actually said, because my house is on the market, as I alluded to, hey, if you sell all my furniture too, I will pay you 3%. I'm offering a 2% buy broke commission there. It's very cheap for me to sell my house because I'm not paying myself anything, because it's just out of my net profit. But I'm saying to everyone, hey, if you give me an at or above list price offer and sell my furniture, I will also spiff you out a little extra something. That's not illegal. I mean, I'm a consenting adult. I'm not a moron. I can help you through this process. Like, I am someone who's willing to do that, but why we can't do that process there, or they're gatekeeping this from a government perspective, to me just seems a little bit silly.
I'm looking at this too, and I'm selling a triplex, and I have it on the market for $900,000. And the way that I'm looking at it is, some of these developers that are selling triplexes don't want to co-op the buyer. It's better for me as a seller that's paying a buyer's agent, because it's gonna.
You don't want to double end it. Yeah, it's liability. You don't want to represent. Are you saying you don't want to represent both sides?
Well, no, dual agency is legal in Pennsylvania.
But you are increasing a substantial amount of liability.
But also, the best buyer's agents have the best and the most qualified clients.
Yes.
That's why, for me, I'd be happy to pay a broker cooperating compensation on even a $2 million house.
If a buyer came to buy my house direct, they sourced me, they knocked the motor, say, hey, I see that you're an owner agent, because you have to disclose that in Arizona. I don't know if it's the same in Pennsylvania. You have to disclose that it's an owner agent or someone who's related to the broker, the licensee, the sales representative on the property. If someone knocked on my door and said, I want to put an offer, and be like, that's incredible. What I'm going to do is we're going to figure out price and terms. And then from a contract perspective, I'm going to call my friend Nick over here. And Nick is going to represent you through the process. And I'm going to pay him a spiff out of this commission. I'm going to pay him $2,000 just to legally have him do the paperwork, to negotiate on your behalf for the inspection report and things of that nature, to reduce my liability and offshore that onto him, so I don't do that, and I'm not responsible for that, especially if it's my own house, because that is liability city, as I'm sure you can appreciate, right? You're opening up a can of worms that may be detrimental, and I'd rather not be emotionally involved in that process there, so I would elect to have that person have that representation and that opportunity. It's very cheap. If you spend $2,000 to sell your house, you just scored, especially, at a house that's, around $850,000, plus or minus in that vicinity. That's literally zero costs at all. That means with closing costs, might be like $6,000. That's nothing, right? And maybe credit here and there. So that is uber crucial to think about on that end there. But what is interesting to me is the sad unintended consequences of this, if in fact you can't pay a buyer's agent, or if the buyer has to literally pay a buyer's agent to show them properties. What's going to happen is, more deals than not are going to be double-ended. Well, who does the selling agent have fiduciary responsibility to?
The seller.
Of course. So what's going to happen to the buyer who's never bought a house before, and what's going to go on there? Do you think there's some unintended consequences there? The answer for me is 100% there's going to be some problems there.
Well, the other thing too is I'm curious about how that's going to impact a market like Miami. Because when you look at a market like New York City, for example, if you look at
It's broker
if you look at
all day long. To do a
tenant
rental
representation,
property,
right? The tenant has to pay their own broker anyways. So
there really no changes here.
one of my top clients says that this new legislation is going to allow for cream of the crop realtors to rise. And
So I say for you, it's perfect.
your real estate agents that aren't adding value to the transaction, they're going to get phased out.
Yeah, which is
And
perfect.
what I look at for my specific market is Philadelphia. We're the 5th or 6th largest city in the country, but we're one of the lowest in income cities in the country. If as sellers, you make the buyers pay their own broker, and most of the transactions in our market are 0, 3, and 5% down, because you can actually afford to buy a property for 0, 3, and
Likewise in
5% down.
Arizona.
Most of these buyers are barely qualifying. So by making the buyer pay more, in my opinion, I think that would make the net price for the seller lower.
I also think that if you are, let's say you're a VA loan person, or let's say you are an FHA buyer, or like in the next house I'm going to put like $0 down, because I'm going to throw like $150,000 to $200,000 into, adding square footage, totally changing the composition. So when you walk in and stay at my house, you're not offended by my cabinetry, right? So I'm going to make sure that my house is dialed up and it looks amazing. So that is my plan. But to your point there, most buyers who are just trying to get into the market are really going to get screwed more than anyone else, in my opinion, because they're going to be in a situation where, unfortunately, they're going to, need representation, but they're not going to pay someone 15 grand, 10 grand, or whatever to do that, because they're barely even putting that much down on the property to start with. So now you're doubling their closing costs to close. So how does that make sense for them? It's just, and I don't know if in the loan it'll be financed in there one way or another. We don't know how this is going to play out, but I do think there's just, generally speaking, more unintended consequences than solutions that this is presenting, at least as I know. And this whole 6% thing is a misnomer as well, because maybe if you're in North Carolina or Mississippi or Alabama and you're selling $100,000 houses, then it's 6%, which is $3,000 per. And if you're running around, that's a lot of work for $3,000. Okay, so not every house is a $10 million house in Miami on South Beach, or a penthouse in New York for $20 million. That's just not how the market is in this country.
Well, I would say the value the broker is bringing is worth their commission, because I'll tell you what, one of my best friends is selling a $15 million house, and he's happy to pay the 6% commission.
And I'd be happy to pay a commission of 3%, 2.5%, whatever it is to sell my houses. I don't care. I want the best people doing this. I'm not going to go to surgery and use a shitty surgeon.
I'm selling one of my properties right now, and I'm paying the buyer's agent more than 3%.
4%, 3.5%?
Yeah, right around 3.5%.
Yeah, exactly, because that's still cheaper than the other market option, and you want to incentivize the other person to come and bring their clients.
Especially in a market with as many sales comparable to 2009. So you somewhat have to pivot depending on the market. And different markets call for different things. When you looked at the market in 2021, 2022, everything was selling itself. But where the most competent broker brought value is when there's 10 buyers bidding on a house and you're the broker who could actually get it. Well, you've just brought the value to your client.
Yeah.
Now, properties aren't selling and days on market's up, interest carry is up. And I've had clients who wanted 2021 prices in 2023. They just sat on the market paying 10% construction interest, didn't sell. And there are people that have gotten screwed.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it just sucks that I didn't think there was really a need for this change to happen. And as I said, there's just always someone in the marketplace that will do it for cheaper. Okay. And you want to incentivize people to do things. And, driving around, I've had buyers where I've shown them 40 properties to finally sell them one. That price for hours is really low. Then I've similarly shown two properties to a buyer before and sold them that house. So it's not necessarily a linear gain. Sometimes you get overplayed. Sometimes you get wildly underpaid for your services.
And what I would say is, to add on to the fact where you're saying there's always someone that does it cheaper.
Yeah. And if cheap's what you want, that's maybe not the best thing, but
Well,
that's your prerogative as an American.
Look at this right now. We both have penny loafers on.
Right.
So is the client going to be the individual that's going to go to Walmart and go buy Hanes penny loafers, or are they going to go to Xenia or Laura Piana or Suit Supply and get some quality penny loafer that's going to last?
Yeah, right. That's very, and this is the best analogy that I've said to so many people. There are Toyotas and there are Bentleys. They both get you from point A to point B. You can fly Spirit or you can fly private. They're taking you to the same place. But certain people out there want certain services. That's your prerogative to find what makes sense for you in your budget, and that's up to you. Why this needs to happen, I don't know. I understand, some of the ideas. Maybe more transparency is fine. Maybe if it's more stated in the front end that a buyer has to sign off to see what the commission is, and maybe they can negotiate them down. Or maybe a buyer's so appreciative of the services, that's fine. But what's also going to happen on the flip side of this? You, knowing who you are, knowing your market expertise, knowing that you know the market so well and so niche down, you're probably going to be able to have a situation where you say, well, I have an opportunity here as a development. Listen, you can do it, but I'm going to charge 5% to you to buy this opportunity. Otherwise, it makes sense for me to do it myself. Up to you. Let me know what you want to do. Make the decision by tomorrow. And you probably could charge way more to clients on the buyer side than what was there before, as opposed to the 3% before. So the flip side is for the really great agents like yourself, you're going to be able to create a market and actually probably make way more on some opportunities and get outsized commissions due to the value that you're bringing in an opportunity, especially if something gets hot and there's a lot of spread and you can convey that through spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the thing is whenever there's a big shift or a revolution in the way that things happen, there's always an opportunity to capitalize.
Yeah, it's just
of that.
Exactly. We live in America, right? Figure out a way to profit. If you don't like what's going on south of the border, well, it's perfect. You should actually invest in Lone Star Capital because these millions of people that have came here have to live somewhere, and they're not going to be living in the Ritz-Carltons unless you're in New York, of course, and they give you debit cards with thousands of dollars. But they're going to live in workforce housing. So that's why we buy and invest in workforce housing, affordable projects that preserve that and allow us to get nice returns, of course, and preserve affordability, so on and so forth. Something slightly facetious there. I am a little bit of a capitalist, but just figure out ways to create accretive returns and how that fits into your life. Final question for you, because we've gone on for some time now. This is one of the longer episodes on Fun Friday, which is great, and that's what happens when we're in person. The energy is more infectious. But you obviously are first generation. Well, you're actually an immigrant, so you're not even your kids will be first generation American, right?
Yep.
So you got your citizenship how long ago?
2016, so
right. So right when you graduated college, because we're basically in lockstep with we've gone through life and whatnot. You probably graduated high school in 2012, I want to say.
2012.
Yeah, likewise as well. So class of 2012 and 2016 over here as well. So final question to you. What does the American dream mean to you as an immigrant?
What does it mean to me? It's doing what I'm doing now, because I would have never thought that where I would be was even possible. And when you look at my post-college goal of making $100,000 a year prior to 30 and having been able to achieve that at 22, that's the American dream. So you can literally achieve whatever you want. And there's guys a lot younger than me that are doing a lot better than me. And I think it's awesome. And it's what you can achieve here in America.
Yeah. And it's so funny you say that. I've gone to Europe a couple of times, and I've, our last couple of summers have been, Europe dozens of times, but I've been to Asia before. So you get different perspectives when you travel a bit, right? And when I feel like I'm in Europe, more specifically, not really like, the Netherlands or, England or anything like that, right? But like if you go to Italy, other places there, it's like you look around, it's like, how are these people like able to, really get wealthy if they want to hustle? And it's just, I don't really think with how their tax code works, it's really even that possible, right? There's just not that much opportunity anymore to really crush it. But this country, as we know it today, definitely has that opportunity.
One thing that's crazy that I just found out is apparently if you own a home in England, personally in your own name, you cannot write off the interest unless it's in an LLC. And what's awesome about America is that living in your primary home, you're exempt. You can write off interest of up to $750,000. So it's crazy
to max out those IO loans. Yeah,
it's crazy how the rules change from place to place.
Without a doubt. Well, Where can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about you, maybe invest with you if you ever take on capital in the future, pick your brain, get into your ecosystem? How can people find you?
It'll be email francis@unlockedteam.com, and you can connect with me on Instagram @Francis Mangubat.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm looking forward to having a fun weekend with you in New York. Appreciate your time and the conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Craig. Pleasure.
Absolutely. Yeah.